When you hear my voice on Sunday, that means you are not hearing about a Nebraska football win these days, or at least that's what the odds tell you. It is Mike Schaefer. I am back with another Sunday side session, this time to talk about Nebraska's latest collapse against Wisconsin and a Big Ten team, and in football in general. I don't know. I mean, it's not great. Honestly, it's just not great. Nebraska, 15-14 losers to Wisconsin. To help me break it all down, to put it into perspective, to discuss all three highlights from the game, Josh Peterson from Unsportsmanlike Conduct on 1620 The Zone. Josh, welcome to the Sunday Side Session podcast.
Let's get hyped.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. So walking out of the stadium yesterday, I was talking with Brunt. And we were kind of having the conversation, and it's like I've seen enough Nebraska losses, like more than I would have expected at this point in my 11 years at Husker 24/7 and my 13 years of covering the team in general. The thing that I am now not prepared for is just this sort of idea that Nebraska is never just going to win the game in front of them.
Yep.
I mean, there are so few examples with Rutgers basically, and I guess Indiana, and I sort of North Dakota because I was tied at one point.
Sure.
I mean,
yeah.
those are the three games in which Nebraska shows the resiliency necessary to either get off the field at the end or to go punch in enough points to go win a game. And it is just befuddling to watch. And yet you knew it as it was happening. It was just like, well, they got to keep adding here. They need to get at least X amount of first downs, or they need to do this. And whenever Nebraska needs to do something in the year of 2022, it is very difficult, laborious, and often unsuccessful.
Yeah, I think the hard part for, so many Husker fans right now, and I mean, even those of us who cover them, is you can see it coming from a mile away. I don't know how many, group chats that you're in where the conversation turned sour at some point in the second half. I know that I was in a few, certainly Twitter felt that way, where it's like, all right, well, how are they going to find a way to lose it this time? And at one point, Shape, it was like kind of a joke, within the last couple of years. But I think now saying that, and I know I thought it on Saturday, it's just kind of a point where I feel sad. Like, okay, well, how are they going to figure out a way to lose it this time? Like another really good performance by Bill Bush's defense, another real strong performance against, and look, it was two running backs this week instead of maybe just one guy, but they held both of them below 100 yards. The first time Wisconsin didn't have a 100-yard rusher in a game versus Nebraska in years. And still, in the end, you just kind of could see it happening. The part I think that stinks the most about a lot of these losses right now is, at least last year, it was always like these goofy plays that would go against Nebraska. Oh, hey, they had a strange fumble at the worst time possible, or a horrible penalty that gave the opposition another chance. Like, this one was just a slow burn, death by 1,000 paper cuts. And, again, saw it coming from a mile away. And sure enough, Wisconsin, completes the pass. It's 1st and goal. They end up punching it in a couple plays later. They leave as a victor again.
Yeah. And I mean, it also just sort of, the difficulty that Nebraska has of just doing anything on offense right now. And look, they're playing better defenses, but if you just put a below average offensive line out there, Nebraska has more. Like, it is so remarkable that we're in now through 11 games and you still aren't entirely sure if you've seen the worst offensive line performance this season. Yeah. Because it would had to have been Saturday. I mean, I don't know that their offensive line has looked worse at any other point. And that's saying a lot because we've seen Casey Thompson under duress most of this season.
Yep.
But Saturday was just like a different level. It felt like neither guard. It didn't matter if it was Brock Bando, Ethan Piper, Henry Lutovsky, the ghost of, Carl Nix. Like, it didn't matter who it was that was playing guard out there. Just got absolutely destroyed. And it's one thing if you're just getting shoved back, like you're losing the point of attack.
Yeah.
I mean, Nebraska was getting like a hand on a guy before a high school swim move just ripped him through.
Yeah.
And, the play's basically destroyed right at the onset. And it's I don't know how you call that offense. I don't know if you're Anthony Grant, how you're supposed to run the ball.
Mhm.
Anthony Grant didn't help himself out with a couple
Nope.
times where, he just needed to get north and south. So there's other issues at play just besides the offensive line. But, that first and goal carry where basically like they just called a dive or, maybe it wasn't a straight dive, but just a simple inside
Yeah.
running play.
Yeah.
And there was 3 Wisconsin defenders a yard past the line of scrimmage before Casey Thompson had handed him the
Yeah.
ball.
Yeah.
3 of them. Like, that is – and, okay, so one came untouched from outside, sure. One guy went right up the middle.
Yeah.
Just right through Trent Hickson.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
it was just
it was
horrible.
baffling, man. And not to turn away from the offense for too long, but like there were other times when Nebraska was on defense and it was like, okay, here it looks like they're going to bring the house, and nobody, no one was even near, Graham
Yeah.
Mertz, and that was certainly a big frustration. You were obviously watching the game in the stadium. I had it on TV, and there was a time in the second half I was at the station, and they show a graphic, and it says like rushing yards this half. And it was like Wisconsin was at the time like 150, and Nebraska it said 22. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And they still had the lead, man. They still had
they
the
were
lead.
probably up 14-3 at that point.
Yeah, and that's the part that is just, they just, again, in one of these games in the second half, they couldn't do that one more thing. They couldn't have that one extra drive that would have just really made it tough on Wisconsin. And then they were unable to put it away. Like you said what you did about the offensive line a few minutes ago. Like to look at the rushing statistics in this one for Nebraska, 29 carries for 65 yards, 2.2 yards per carry. I mean, it's baffling. Casey Thompson has the longest run of the day, 14 yards, longer than Anthony Grant had. And, sometimes Anthony Grant, his shiftiness and his ability to not always run forward, it ends up helping, him in Nebraska. But, man, so often it hurt them and it put them behind the chains. But, I mean, a lot of times also, like you said, I mean, he didn't have a whole lot of help from up front. It was just, I mean, kind of a complete failure top to bottom in a lot of ways with the offensive performance.
Well, and then I see people hammering Mark Whipple, and I understand why they're doing that. And yet at the same time, he might be playing galaxy brain play calls because Nebraska's best running game was scrambling for the 3rd week in a row.
Yeah.
Like literally clearing out receivers to then have your quarterback scramble was more successful than any other run game that Nebraska could put together.
Along those lines, what do you think of, because Ravi and I spent a lot of time on Overreaction yesterday talking about this, rolling Casey Thompson out and putting him in position maybe where he's getting away from the flow? I know that obviously that's going to take off half the field, most likely in terms of what type of routes you can run and the receivers that you're going to have, but just putting him on the running, maybe getting him away from some of that pressure that was obviously coming up front, darn near every time he dropped back to pass.
So I guess my question is this: which direction are you going to roll him?
I assume to the right, so he's not thrown across his body.
So then you're putting a lot of pressure on your right tackle to marginally hold up, so you're not rolling straight into a pass rush.
Yeah, maybe you put him back like a punter. You snap it; he's in like a punt formation, 10 to 12 yards behind the line of scrimmage. It would give him plenty of time. He could throw running forward. That'd be nice.
The saddest thing is Nebraska should almost use a wide receiver that steps back, that doesn't run a route, that all he does is stays in for protection to then roll to that side.
Yeah, seriously.
That might be the safest way to keep Casey Thompson upright right now.
Yeah.
I mean, traditionally, I think rolling a pocket makes sense if you have one weak tackle. It's a lot harder to do when you have 2 guys that can't play offensive tackle combined with 2 guys that can't play offensive guard.
Yeah.
And look, is that over the top? Probably. But they don't have answers. I mean, this is the worst offensive line play anyone has seen, and we're now in game 11. I'd love to know where Donovan Raiola got the team better at any point this season.
Yeah, seriously. And, isn't the baffling part then about this, like, that they sometimes score, that they got a couple of touchdowns. And
they stay out of their own way long enough to score?
Yeah. That they seriously, man, that they and yesterday they were the second touchdown drive. They benefited from 2 penalties on Wisconsin that helped them.
Yards of penalties.
Yeah. So I mean, that was obviously a big help. But that they sometimes will have these drives where it looks really good, and you're like, wow, why can't they do that more often? And I don't know how much of it is that, man, they sometimes are just really great at putting together a game plan, and executing it at the start of a game. Other times, how much of it is just the opposition adjusting to them and Nebraska not being able to adjust back? But
I think a lot of it is that. I
yeah,
don't think Mark Whipple can adjust to whatever a team just chooses to take away.
yeah,
And so that's why when they have success, it's fleeting because
yep,
it's just sort of they lucked into the right play call at the right time, or an individual made a really nice play,
mm-hmm.
or Casey Thompson avoids pressure and then picks up a first down to extend a drive. You get a penalty, you get another penalty. I mean, it's just they almost need to luck into these situations. And they're going to get another week of that again against Iowa, where
Yep.
they're just not going to competently be able to put together drives that'll get you, 17 points. Whatever the over under for that game is, if it's above 35, like, I mean, I don't think Iowa can score on Nebraska's defense straight up.
Yeah, yesterday it was 32.5 for the game against Minnesota, and the under easily hit between Iowa and Minnesota. Nebraska and Wisconsin, that under easily hit. Seriously, I wonder if it might be lower than the 32.5. Could it get into the 20s,
I mean, that would be one of the lowest unders I think I've ever seen.
I think so, yeah.
But that's kind of where we're at when you're talking about both of those offenses. So, it's got to be super frustrating to the people over there, but at the same time, it's collective. Like, I've been ragging on the offensive line, but they weren't the only ones to make mistakes yesterday. I mean, Nebraska's special teams play at times, like, you got really good performances individually from some of your kickers. And then you also have guys like Tommy Hill who just don't have situational awareness at all. You get the big opportunity to have a return and to flip field position, and at the very least give yourself a punt that's going to force them to have to go the length of the field, and you get a holding call at that moment on the kick return, which I don't even know. Like, I never saw where the hold was. I think it was called on Omar Manning.
Yeah, I didn't see it either.
The absolute baffling part to me is that flag was thrown in the area in which the ball was kicked off. So I don't even know how there could have been holding that far upfield at that point in time.
And how does that happen that fast too?
Yeah. So it was absolutely dumbfounding to me. That kind of stuff. You have Oliver Martin, who I guess if he's just told he's not allowed to do anything but fair catch it.
Yeah, he had catching it with yards to run.
Yeah, he had 2 instances where there was yards to run, and then a third instance where the ball is driving. I understand you don't want to let it get too far deep, but that last fair catch where they take it on the 10 or whatever, if he lets that go, that probably goes into the end zone. You pick up 10 extra yards.
That thing was screaming towards the end zone.
Well, and you saw with Brian Buschini, like, with the guys kicking with the wind, you got to let it go.
Yeah,
let
exactly.
That thing fall in there. I just absolutely, just little decisions like that just seem to weigh against Nebraska far more than any other team you'd see in college football, because it just repeatedly, when given the opportunity to make a 50-50 good or bad decision, it's like they always end up picking bad.
Yeah, they lose yards, they lose, field position, all of those things. Yeah, I mean, you just mentioned a couple of 3 special teams plays, basically, right? A punt that could have gone into the end zone, a hold on a kick return, a fair catch when there were at least 10 yards to run. I mean, that stuff adds up. That stuff adds up. And so for a team, Schaefer, that average, as we mentioned, 2.2 yards a carry and 5.3 yards per pass attempt. They ran 49 plays yesterday, and they barely had 170 yards. Like, that type of yardage adds up, because if you're not moving the ball, you need to start in a better spot to take advantage of it, and they're unable to.
Well, and then on top of that, I mean, just like the fact you're only running 49 plays, like, that works against you too. Like, you don't have the ability to stay on the field, which then means your defense is on the field a long time. And frankly, I mean, even though they gave up the yardage running, Nebraska's defense gave you every opportunity to win this game again.
Again, man, the long run for Wisconsin was 22 yards. They bottled up, and that, look,
which was an incredibly nice play by Braylon Allen. Super patient. He let things develop. I don't know how a 6'1" guy would, hides like that.
Yeah,
but he was able to hide in behind that offensive line. It was a really, really nice run.
Yeah, and he was obviously banged up, the entire game, but they did as good of a job again for what's this, the 4th straight week now where they've gone against a really good back. And I think that they've done about as good as I would have expected them to do. Hell, I mean, at this point in time, let alone 2 months ago, if you would have told me that they would put together these 4 games against these 4 backs, I would have laughed at you and said that's going to be impossible. And yet they did it. They never got totally owned on that side of the ball. But like you said, I mean, at a certain point, they're going to be on the field so long, and, Wisconsin's going to march down and score. And even then, man, the last drive for Wisconsin, that wasn't easy. You know, the catch
Yeah.
to get to set up 1st and goal and then not calling a timeout, still baffling to me. But that catch, that was a nice play by a running back. There was the debate I know that people were having on Twitter. Should they let him score? Should they not let him score? It still took them 3 more downs.
Yep.
They made them work when they got into the 1st and goal situation. So, yeah.
I think you absolutely don't let them score because it's still like Graham Mertz. It's still Wisconsin.
And then it's still your offense that you're
Yeah,
expecting to go down
it
the
doesn't-
field and score.
Nebraska could have had 3 minutes at the end of that game to go score a field goal, and I don't know that confidence would have been super high.
They could have had 10 minutes, and I'm not going to buy that they're going to do it. I mean, seriously. By the end of the game, what the offense was trying to do was, and that's it. Like going back one drive before that, look, I'm okay, and I've said this a bunch of times the last 24 hours. If you want to throw it on 3rd and 7, I am totally good with that because you're kind of in a no man's land, right? Where if you run it up the gut, you're essentially giving them the ball back. You're making them take a timeout, but you're giving them the ball back. But if you're going to do a pass, like maybe a high completion type play, why are you chucking the ball down the field that far? I don't know how much of that was on Casey's read. I don't know how much of that was on the play call, but look, and I know the offense was trash. So in a way, maybe nothing would have worked, but why not try a screenplay? Chancellor Brewington, Schaefer, like every time he catches the ball, he seems to be like an auto 5 yards. If you agree with that theory, he's just got to get 2 more. Maybe he could have gotten 2 more and the clock would have run. So I don't know. I was just baffled by that play.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen something a little bit safer, closer to the line of scrimmage, just to keep the clock going. So they have to either use a timeout, or you're running a little bit more clock, or just try to catch Wisconsin off guard. I mean, the one criticism that I think is very fair with Mark Whipple in the running game, not that the other ones aren't fair to a degree, but the one that I think I agree with most strongly. There's not a lot of creativity to it. And I mean, that is one thing that Scott Frost said. And I was kind of on him about after that Northwestern game, mostly because I felt like you're burying your offensive coordinator in his first performance, kind of when you were the head coach that hired him and called that onside kick. But the creativity doesn't feel like it's there sometimes. Like they just a lot of inside run. You didn't, maybe you try something, you get to the corner, you get to the edge, whatever.
Yeah.
But that's also hard with how bad the offensive line is. And frankly, if edge can even hold up there. So I don't know. I mean, I didn't love that play call. I honestly felt like they should have taken that clock all the way down, took a timeout themselves, just gather everybody and talk about like, hey, the high percentage thing is we want to keep the clock running. That's the most valuable thing for us here. We're not going to run a straight run. We are going to run a pass. But Casey, if it's not there, you can't throw it. And, it's the same thing. Like, make sure when Tommy Hill's going out there, their chances weren't very high, but make sure when Tommy Hill's going out there for that last kickoff, just take the free yards. The time is more valuable than the yards you're going to get us when you're averaging 6 yards on a kick return today.
Yeah. Especially when you end up getting nothing to begin with. It's really thinking of the offense again, man. It has really gotten to a point where you could go into a post-game show or a podcast the day after like this, and no matter where you want to blame the offense for their issues, like I think you're kind of right. I don't think any of us are wrong. It's just kind of like, who do you want to blame more? Do you want to blame the offensive line more for putting Whipple in spots? Do you want to blame Whipple more for putting the quarterback in spots? Like you can kind of go any way you want. And that's the true indictment of this entire operation is that I think every position it can fall in the blame category, or you can use other people to blame for why they're struggling right now.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I'm sort of at this sort of point where it's like I don't know that it would be the worst thing in the world to just completely start over everything.
I've kind of gotten that point too, man. Yeah.
Like I understand what's at stake with the recruiting class. I understand what's at stake with continuity on the roster, and yet it just feels so entrenched, and I think I used it baked into the fabric of the program on Twitter, so I could be particularly melodramatic. But that's just how it feels. Like it's just like,
it does.
Like I said, and it's not just this year. It's not just last year. It's not just 2020. It's not just Scott Frost. It just feels like even dating back a little before that, when given the opportunity to seize the moment in front of them, Nebraska has just turtled repeatedly.
Yeah,
It's so frustrating because I don't look across at these teams like Wisconsin and Minnesota and Illinois and Purdue and upcoming with Iowa and think that they have more talent than Nebraska. Yeah. They're just better coached.
Yeah.
That's all it is. Nebraska has the talent. These guys are better coached. They're better developed. In some ways, they're not even better strategizing. Like, I think if Wisconsin hires Jim Leonard, he has to replace most of that entire coaching staff.
It's a weird staff right now, man.
Well, and then on top of it, like, I'm not scared of Wisconsin with Jim Leonard.
No.
He was, I mean, between both of those coaches, it very much felt like two guys with not a whole lot of experience in close and late games. So, and also, I don't know what you have to do if you're Wisconsin to figure out that you didn't really need to put the ball in the air ever on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, seriously. What are you doing?
Every first down pass should have had some kind of machine that gets the offensive coordinator kicked in the ass, like there's just no point in doing it. And they did it a half dozen times to their own detriment.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for that one, Jim Leonard. I'm with you, man. Going back to the coaching staff conversation, I'm with you. And not to, again, melodramatic, not to be too melodramatic, but, we've seen a couple of baseball franchises in the last 2 decades that had, decades and decades and decades of futility and not winning, in the Red Sox and in the Cubs. And one of the things that I liked that they did when they overcame that was they brought in managers that they just didn't care. They didn't care about the past. They're not gonna wallow in it. And look, Nebraska's lack of success does not compare with those franchises and what they went through. But I think I'm with you, man. I've gotten to the point where it's like, I think it would be best for all parties if it was just new coaches up and down. And I know what that means. I know that means I am saying no Mickey Joseph, a part of the staff, and maybe oddly Schaefer, more importantly, now no Bill Bush, who I think has become easily the MVP of this season for Nebraska football. But I just I don't know. I don't know if the short-term gains of one recruiting class and a few recruits is what is best for this program long term. Look, whomever the next head coach is, if they want to keep those guys, or if they want to keep Applewhite, or if they want to keep one, or maybe none, I think it might be best to just move on entirely, and just try something different, try something new, and just kind of push all of the stink of the last decade plus into the rearview mirror, and try to figure things out from anew.
Yeah, I didn't think that I would be at that point either, and I still don't know that it's the correct decision. But there's just days like Saturday where it makes you wonder, if you just wouldn't benefit from just a completely fresh start over. And I know that's what they tried to do when Scott Frost came in. I mean, the only person really at that whole operation that stayed over would have been Kenny Wilhite. So it's not like that hasn't been something that's been tried, and it didn't lead to success. So I don't know that that's, there's not like there's empirical evidence that you're going to be better because of it. So it's just one of those things coming out of Saturday where just seeing this routinely and wondering, is it just, built in? Like, do they just need a completely new voice? But that's where you hope with a different head coach and different assistant coaches to a degree that there's a different mantra, there's a different belief that you can go and get things done. And there's coaches that develop and put players in the right situation to be successful.
Yeah, look, we have seen enough teams, and I'm not trying to say Nebraska is a playoff team or something like that next year, but TCU was a bad football team last season. They have a new voice this year, and they are squarely in the mix to make the college football.
Well, they're going and they're making their own breaks. I mean, that's so, a lot of it with Nebraska is they don't go out and they don't get a sack in a critical situation. They don't tip the ball in the air and then come up with the interception. They don't punch the ball out like, even Michigan State in overtime against Wisconsin. They got Braylon Allen to fumble. Yeah. It's not, this is a bad Wisconsin team, and Nebraska couldn't get them off track in the final drive.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
As good as that defense played for 58 other minutes,
they couldn't get one stop.
They couldn't get the stop.
Yeah, and you look at the end of the TCU game yesterday, where it looked like kind of a comedy of errors, and you're like, what is TCU doing? They're going to lose this game because of poor clock management. And they end up getting the field goal, and then in the postgame, they talk about, we've prepared for these moments where we are down, we have no timeouts, and we have to get the entire offense off the field, and then the special teams on the field. And by the time that they got lined up and the kicker got ready to go with 3-4 seconds left, they did look cool, calm, and collected, and he knocked in a field goal, and it wasn't even close. It was an easy make for him by that point in time. So we've seen enough around college football. And I mean, not to mention Kansas, because obviously I know that brings a whole host of other discussion points right now. But with Leipold, that was also a horrible, horrible, horrible football program. And now they're going to a bowl in year 2. And are they perfect? Obviously not. They just got rocked by Texas, and they have a whole lot of issues still. but like it can be done. You can win games at the very least, and you can get to bowl games at the very least relatively quickly. But I think it's just time for a new voice. I think that place, for whatever reason, it just needs it needs a new and a different voice right now. And maybe they'll start believing in themselves a little bit more. Maybe they'll start getting those breaks like you just mentioned.
Let's finish with this. It's currently 10:12 on Sunday, November 20th. Will we know who Nebraska's coach is 7 days from this moment?
Officially, like a press release?
Officially.
No, I don't think so. I don't think we're going to know at this
You don't
point.
think we're going to get a 9:45 press release?
No, I don't. And this is very little information, if any information.
You're just rooting against it happening on a Sunday?
I definitely am. Now, at least the Cowboys don't play next Sunday. And by the way, props to us for getting 25 plus minutes into this thing and not talking about our beloved football teams playing today.
Nobody cares about this game besides us.
That's true. But
and
Dallas,
millions around the world.
Yeah, they'll be watching. After they watch the World Cup this morning, they'll be watching the Cowboys-Vikings game. But for some reason, Schaefer, I think it's going to happen after the weekend. And maybe I am wrong, but I think it's going to bleed into the next week. But I think I have gotten to the point
where Josh Peterson thinks they're hiring a guy who's in the conference championship game.
I just don't know if they have the guy locked up yet, man.
Wow.
Like, I just don't, that there is
over the
last 48 hours, it seems like Matt Rule has kind of dropped off, right? Like no one's really talking about Matt Rule as much anymore to be the
we're talking about deactivated Twitter accounts is what
we're talking about deactivated Twitter accounts. Sadly, or surprisingly, maybe not Doug Ewald. But the Kansas guys apparently keep, getting mentioned. People are talking about Kansas guys. Well, Kansas State, Schaefer, they might be coaching, they might be playing in the conference championship game. So yeah, I don't think we'll have anything official. I'm just hoping at this point in a week, there will be something like leaking. Like, I just want to know something. Give us some information. Schaefer, give us some information and make the announcement a week from today.
I'm trying. I'm trying to get that info. We'll see what I'm able to accomplish. So you're predicting. So the headline of this show should be Josh Peterson says Chris Kleiman in the bag.
I wouldn't go that far.
Okay.
But, Trev is shopping. It's Christmas season. You're getting your shopping going. He's at the store. He's at the store right now. He just sees all the coaches. If I was really good at graphic work, I would do that. I'd have like a nice aisle, a shelf, and then there's like Matt Rule on the shelf and Chris Kleiman on the shelf and, all these other coaches on the shelf. Honkin' for Monken. Jeff Monken's on the shelf.
Yep. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that would be waiting 2 extra weeks by your announcement.
If it's Jeff?
Yeah, because they got a bye week after this weekend.
Yeah, but couldn't you hire him and then be like, and then he's going to go coach the Army-Navy game and then he'll get back to us?
But you wouldn't need to wait that long. You could still announce it on Sunday at 10:12 in the morning.
Do you think it's going to be announced 1 week from today? Now it's 10:15. You think it's going to be announced at 10:15?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it'll be announced at 10:20.
You think you'll record? Are you still doing a Sunday side session? Or are you going to do a Saturday side session?
I don't know yet. So I don't think there'll be a guest for any of the podcasts next week because it's always kind of a mess with the weird schedule and trying to get everything put together. So I think one of the two guys will join me. We're trying to figure out if there's a way that we can do a StreamYard as they drive back from from Iowa. Yeah.
Nice.
I don't know if we can make that happen or not. My guess is no. But we'll try.
And here's the question. So 2 things off of that. One, I will let you know, mutual friend Jack Mitchell is a little sad that he hasn't been invited onto the Sunday side session, and he was holding out hope that he might get the invite for the final game of the season.
Well, Iowa. I mean, look, if someone wants to do it,
there you go.
The bigger issue is just trying to schedule in a weird time frame like this. So
absolutely.
I'm more than happy to have Jack Mitchell on the Sunday side set. I shouldn't be surprised that he's telling other people that he feels left out instead of just directly asking if he can join.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
I also don't know that he even knew that this podcast existed. So.
Oh no, he does. He was like, my coworker Caleb Henry was on it. I want to be on it too. So we had
Caleb was a great guest. Everybody enjoyed Caleb. After the
and so here's the other thing, though, that I wonder, Schaefer, and this has happened, I think, to all of us this season because it happened the day after Georgia Southern. I recorded a podcast that morning. You recorded a podcast. I think you had Corey McEwen on, and we talk about the game, and then in 5 seconds it becomes the most dated listen of all time.
Yep.
And so ultimately, I'm wondering, will you finish the Sunday side session now with Jack Mitchell? And you'll be like, all right, well, if something happens, it'll happen, and then you'll press stop, and then the press release will get announced, and you'll be like, well, that was a cool podcast. Nobody cares about the Iowa game anymore.
I think if he wants to do it, we'll just knock it out Saturday morning before the college football stuff even starts. Because I don't think I'm not looking for any info on that Saturday. I wouldn't expect anything until Sunday morning.
No, we all got to watch Nebraska and Michigan. We all have to sit down on our couches and watch the game.
So I want to finish with this. Like, on a scale of 1, just don't even care. 10 is that'd be freaking awesome, and I would celebrate it. Where would preventing Iowa's return to Indianapolis to slaughter against the winner of the game rank in terms of your interest meter? So, like this Black Friday game, like if Nebraska wins, are you a 10 because Iowa doesn't go to Indy, or is it just like a mere 3?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to lean closer to the 10, mainly from the hilarity factor. Like, cool, congrats, Iowa. You just lost to the worst Nebraska team maybe that I've ever watched, or at the very least, the worst offense that I have watched. And so that would be pretty funny. And the Schadenfreude would be a whole lot of fun. But, I mean, look, Nebraska wins, they move to 4-8. It's not, they're not going bowling, there's not a reward at the end. Even, in previous years, 2018, that felt like a big moment. They win. They finish 5-7. They finish 5-1 in their last 6, but they lose. They still would have missed a bowl. Obviously, 2019 they would have gone to a bowl. 2020 was a weird year, and then last season, it was for Milt, and we were all going to make lots of money for Milt. So yeah, I'm not a 10. I'm not a 3. I don't know. I'd probably be a 6 or a 7. But speaking of our friend Jack Mitchell, it'd be fun just to watch the hilarity of someone like him on Twitter if Nebraska was able to pull off the victory. So yeah, keeping him out of the game. Look, I would also add this. That'd be good for America. I'd rather watch Purdue get slaughtered than I don't want to watch Iowa. It's going to be a bloodbath, man. That'll be a gross football game.
As a Michigan boy that promised me that Michigan was going to win the Big Ten this year.
Yep.
How you feeling with a banged up Blake Corum and a banged up I don't know, not that effective JJ McCarthy?
Yeah, he's looked kind of bad lately. I don't know anymore. Yesterday during the Michigan game, I was like, well, definitely going to be picking Ohio State to win the game next week.
But then Ohio State kind of like messed around with Maryland.
Yeah, they played with their food, and they're banged up too. Running back situation looks to be in flux. Quarterback situation.
Maybe they'll just play a game of 7-on-7 to a million.
Hey, there you go. Or maybe it'll just be a low-scoring affair because the defenses will get after the quarterbacks a bunch. Yeah, I think J.J. McCarthy, his ceiling has been vastly overstated. I think
like every Michigan quarterback in the history of time.
Man, I was thinking yesterday, Schaefer, because in the studio, this was Friday, a 2010 game between Michigan and Illinois was on, and I was just thinking about you and discussing Michigan quarterbacks over the years and Tate Forcier, among other people. So,
we spend a lot of time making fun of Wisconsin's run of quarterbacks.
Yes.
The better version of Wisconsin, but still never had figured out how to have a good quarterback, is Michigan.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, when's the last time Michigan had a quarterback that threatened to be in the NFL since, Chad Henne?
Oh, God. That might be the answer, right? That might be the answer. As a quarterback in the NFL, because what's his name moved to running back for the Jaguars.
Like, it is amazing how few quarterbacks they ever have play where you're like, oh, I'd want that guy on my team.
Yeah. And they always look so small. Every time I see a Michigan quarterback, he just looks small. Like, and then I watch an Ohio State game, and it's like, oh, that quarterback's huge. They just look like tiny dudes.
When you're on a run of like Dwayne Haskins and Justin Fields and
and
CJ Stroud, it's a little different.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But it's not anything like a run of Shea Patterson and Cade McNamara. Who's the Will guy that ended up at UCLA for a year?
Oh, Will Spate? Was that his name?
Yeah.
Spieth? Spate?
Didn't he go to UCLA for like the first year at Chip Kelly?
Yes, he was. He was on he was on the 2018 UCLA team. What was his name? I'm looking it up real fast. Wilton Spate. Yeah. God, that guy stunk. But he was a gamer. He played through injuries.
Yeah. If you had to listen to one former quarterback do color analyst for every game that your team plays in, Would you rather have it be Devin Gardner or RG3?
I like RG3. I am on the RG3 bandwagon.
I find it fun, and I don't think that it's a act. Like I think it's just sort of who he is.
Definitely.
Which then the fact that it's genuine makes me sort of enjoy it because like the man's just a character and we can just experience that.
Yeah, for sure. Plus he seems, I mean, like he was, they ate muchachos on the broadcast yesterday, and then he was tweeting about it again afterwards.
Yeah.
Like he seems like a genuinely good dude. I think he's funny. Ravi Lula said it well to me yesterday on the air. It's good when he is calling a game that ultimately has no significance. His shtick maybe wouldn't go very well if he was calling Ohio State and Michigan when it's 2 versus 3 and they're both undefeated. But for a game between two bad teams like Nebraska and Wisconsin, it kind of fits and it makes the broadcast more enjoyable. Him guessing the states, I thought was a genuinely funny bit. And it's something that like
I don't even know what this is. I didn't watch.
So they did a trivia question, and it was, when's the last time that the Big Ten had a game featuring 2 interim coaches? And he had no idea. And they even gave the answer, and he was like, I have no idea what's happening right now. And so then later on, they were like, let's do an easier question for RG3. And that was, what states surround Nebraska? And so he guessed all of the states that surround Nebraska. It was very funny. And then ultimately he said he had to Google it. So it was, and as someone who, I'm a city boy, I'm from Omaha. Everything to me is Western Nebraska. I felt like, RG3 and I would be best of friends. When
you can name all the states though, right?
Yeah. And I'm pretty good at knowing, we were talking about it yesterday on the postgame show. The East Coast is just the one part where, I know like Vermont, New Hampshire, but some of those states, I'm not exactly sure where they're at. But I know all the states, and I can definitely point to, probably 45 of them on a map.
So if I said just like Utah, you would be able to name all the states around Utah?
Around Utah?
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Around it. So you got Nevada over there. I assume Colorado and Wyoming are touching it. Idaho. Does Idaho touch Utah? Did I say California already? What am I?
You did not. I don't know
California
if it
touch
does.
it?
I don't think it does.
Let's see. You got Washington.
I think Nevada works as a barrier to California.
Okay, yeah, you're right. So did I get them all? Does one of the Dakotas touch?
You're missing one, I think.
What am I missing?
Might be missing 2, but
New Mexico,
specifically 1. Yeah, because of the 4 corners, which
in Arizona.
There you go.
Yeah. All right.
Look at that. We got our own.
Hey, look at that. Nice. This is a new game called Guess the States That Are Around the State.
Yeah, this is great because I was going to end the podcast 15 minutes ago, and now I had people listen for 15 minutes just to hear you name the states around Utah. And that was not a hint to Kyle Whittingham. But
nice. By the way, before we go, how you feeling about the game today?
Vikings win. Vikings at home. And I don't believe that there's much that scares me beyond Tony Pollard and your offense. So,
okay.
Tony Pollard scares me. If they just stick with running with Tony Pollard, that could be a concern. I think it's going to be pretty low scoring. I expect kind of like when these teams play, it sort of feels like 2017 is about as high scoring as it gets. So I'm sort of looking for like a 17-13 kind of game.
Okay. I'm nervous.
Your boy Kirk Cousins doesn't have to get on a plane because he's at home.
That's true. Yeah, he won't take off his shirt on an airplane. Maybe Dak takes off his shirt tonight. Maybe that's what's going to happen.
Oh, that'll be a thing.
Maybe I bet the first team that beats Minnesota, I bet they're going to do that bit. They'll do it on the airplane.
Just as long as Mike McCarthy keeps his shirt on. That's what we want.
That would be the guy to take off the shirt. I like that idea.
Yeah, because you like Mike McCarthy.
Yeah, Super Bowl champion Mike McCarthy to you.
Congrats to him and congrats to the Packers. I'm sure that'll keep them warm this cold winter.
Indeed it will.
All right, Josh, have a good one. I won't talk to you again until after the result of that game is known.
Thank you, Schaefer.
See ya.